During my retirement party, my brother announced he got a job at an engineering firm. Then they turned it into his celebration while I scrubbed frosting off the floor. I didn't argue, but the next morning, my mother found something on the kitchen table and started screaming. The first time I ever threw a party for myself, I was 57 years old. My name's Aaron. I'm from Toledo, Ohio. I spent the last 20 years working the graveyard shift as a transit mechanic. Buses, mostly. Night after night, I kept the city rolling while everyone else slept. No fanfare, no thank you for your service banners. Just oil-stained shirts and quiet rides home at sunrise. So when I decided to retire, I figured I owed myself at least one night. One night to feel like I mattered. I didn't have much money to spend, but I made it count. Rented out the rec room at the Ridgewood Community Center, that old cinder block building near the junior high with the faded vending machines and creaky folding chairs. Nothing fancy, but it felt right. I did everything myself. Printed old route maps and taped them up as decorations. Ordered trays of wings and pierogies from Angie's Deli, my favorite spot since '92. Even made a slideshow, hundreds of photos I'd collected over the years. Busted engines, snow-covered buses, the guys from swing shift pretending not to pose. I spent weeks getting it all just right. Checked and double-checked the timing on the projector, picked out a playlist of Motown and 90s country, and made sure the coffee urns were scrubbed clean. I wanted it to feel warm, not flashy. Just honest. By 6 p.m., people started to arrive. My niece Rachel walked in with a big hug and called me the hardest working man she knows. That nearly cracked me right there. She's 22 now, working toward her nursing license. I remember when she couldn't pronounce carburetor. Then Uncle Pete showed up, moving slower these days but still sharp as ever. He handed me a long, narrow box wrapped in newspaper. It's an old wrench, he said. Found it in Dad's shed. Thought you ought to have it. The thing was rusted and heavy, with the initials HG etched into the grip. My grandfather's. I didn't say much, just nodded and gripped his shoulder. It was going perfectly. Quiet laughter, people swapping stories. I even saw my slideshow start playing. Someone chuckled at a picture of me sleeping in a bus aisle with a coffee cup balanced on my stomach. Everything felt real. And then Trent walked in. My little brother, 5 years younger, 2 inches taller, and always wearing that damn blazer like he just stepped out of a commercial. He came in loud, arms wide like he was entering a press conference. Hey everybody. Big news. I knew that voice. I'd heard it at weddings, at funerals, at Mom's 70th when he gave a toast that somehow included his GPA. Before I could brace for it, he was already launching in. Just accepted a senior design position at Draxel Systems. Boston-based, 6-figure offer, full relocation package. Starting in 2 weeks. People clapped. Someone even hooped. I blinked. For a second, I actually thought maybe he'd made a mistake. Walked into the wrong party or something. But no. Trent started making rounds, shaking hands like a politician. Our parents followed close behind, grinning like lottery winners. Dad threw his arm around Trent and turned toward the crowd. That's our boy. Always knew he was destined for something big. I stood there, still holding a cup of lukewarm coffee, while my own retirement banner hung crooked in the corner. The rest of the night blurred. More guests arrived, most of them for Trent, I realized. Music got louder. Someone brought out sparkling cider. My slideshow froze on a shot of a busted axle and never restarted. I spent most of it near the snack table, pretending not to notice when people drifted past me to offer congratulations to Trent. At one point, I crouched down to wipe up spilled orange soda beneath the table. As I did, I heard my mother's voice above me. You've always been so smart, honey. Even when you were little, you were always building things. Aaron was more hands-on. But you? You had vision. And that was it. My knees ached. My shirt stuck to my back. My party had become a celebration of someone else's future. And I just kept cleaning the floor. I don't know how long I stayed crouched there, scrubbing frosting off the floor with a damp paper towel. My back ached, and the spot wouldn't come clean. Some kid must have mashed cake into the linoleum like they were trying to sign their name in sugar. People kept stepping around me. Not one person said, "Excuse me." Not one asked what I was doing or if I needed help. I was just part of the furniture now. Something to be walked over. I finally sat back on my heels, hand cramping, and looked around from under the table. The decorations I'd put up, the ones I spent 2 hours measuring and centering just right, were gone. In their place were shiny "Congrats, Trent" banners in silver and blue, the kind that probably came from a party store downtown. They hadn't even bothered to move my slideshow. Just turned the projector off and pinned the banners right over the screen. I heard Dad's voice carry from the other room. Remember when Trent fixed the toaster at age 10? I told your mother then, that boy's gonna design something big one day. Laughter followed. Warm, easy laughter. Not cruel, exactly, just dismissive. That did it. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just stood up slowly, hands still sticky with frosting, and walked toward the kitchen. Nobody noticed. Inside, I found the utility closet next to the coffee urns. slipped in, shut the door behind me, and flicked on the little light. It buzzed overhead, a dull yellow hum. The smell of disinfectant and old mops hit me like a wall. I sat down on an overturned paint bucket. My legs felt hollow, like they were only pretending to hold me up. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A group text, so proud of Trent. Whole family wins when one of us succeeds. From Mom, of course. I unlocked my phone, but didn't answer. Instead, I opened the folder I'd been keeping for a while now, one I'd never talked about, not even to my partner, Lena. Plan B. That's what I called it. Just those words, in all caps. Inside were scanned copies of paperwork I'd slowly been putting together over the past few months. Deed transfer drafts, legal notice templates, account summaries. It started as a backup idea, something I didn't fully believe I'd ever use. But sitting there, in that closet, with frosting on my palms and pride in my throat like a rock I couldn't swallow, I realized I wasn't just going to use it. I was ready for it. I read through the first page, a draft letter to be notarized. My name, their names. 30 days notice. It wasn't revenge. It was survival. For too long, I'd been the one fixing things. The one making sure everyone else had what they needed, even when they didn't thank me, especially when they didn't. But this was supposed to be my night, my one moment to feel seen. Instead, I was hiding in a janitor's closet, listening to people toast a man who hadn't even brought his own bottle opener. I closed the folder and locked my phone. Just sat there for a while, staring at the wall, breathing through the fury, slow, deep breaths, the kind the therapist had taught me years ago after Mom called me melodramatic for crying at Grandpa's funeral. That was the moment I made the decision. No more pretending. No more quiet suffering. No more making space for people who never left any for me. I stood up, wiped my hands on a paper towel, and stepped out of the closet. They still didn't notice. I didn't sleep that night. Even after the community center emptied and I finished hauling trash bags out to the dumpster alone, my body felt wired. Like I'd been bracing for a punch that never came. I sat at the kitchen table long after Lena had gone to bed. The overhead light dimmed, a cold mug of coffee untouched beside me. The eviction notices sat neatly in a folder nearby, untouched, but not unread. My mind wouldn't shut off. It kept drifting backward, like it was determined to walk me through every mile of the road that had led me here. I was 12 when I won that district art contest. Drew a city bus with colored pencils, nothing special, just something I worked on every afternoon after finishing my paper route. I was proud of it. My art teacher submitted it without telling me, and when I won, she called our house with the news. I remember running into the kitchen, waving the certificate in the air. Mom didn't even look up from folding laundry. That's nice, she said. But it's not a real skill. You can't live off drawing buses, Aaron. That same week, Trent came home with a C+ in science, and Dad took us all out for pizza. He's got potential, Dad said, clinking his glass against Trent's orange soda. Just needs the right direction. I didn't say anything. When I turned 16, I spent the summer rebuilding a rusted-out Ford pickup I found on blocks behind a neighbor's garage. Paid for it with every penny I earned sweeping the shop floor at Miller's garage. Took me 4 months. When it finally ran, I drove straight to the house, honked in the driveway like I'd won the lottery. Dad came out, gave it a once-over, then asked if Trent could borrow it for the weekend. Family sharing, Mom said with a smile. You're the responsible one. He's just not quite there yet. So I handed over the keys. Again, and again, and again. By the time I was 19, I was working full-time. Nights, weekends, holidays. No parties, no college, no plans. Just the steady rhythm of wrenches and grease and clocking in on time. I saved every cent I could, and when the duplex came up for sale, the same one we'd been renting since I was a kid, I bought it. Didn't tell anyone right away. I just brought the paperwork home one night and handed it to my parents at dinner. We own it now, I said. You don't have to pay rent anymore. Mom cried. Dad gave me a nod. Trent asked if that meant he could turn the upstairs office into a music room. He was 20 then, still between things, still borrowing. I covered property taxes, fixed the plumbing when it backed up, rewired the panel after the breaker started sparking. Every problem became mine by default. No one asked. They just waited for me to show up and fix it. When I turned 50, I mentioned retirement at dinner casually, just a thought. You. Dad laughed. You've still got gas in the tank. Besides, Trent's just getting started. That's the future to be excited about. I smiled, nodded, didn't say much. But that sentence stuck with me. That was the moment I understood. I wasn't the legacy. I wasn't the story they'd tell at holidays or brag about to the cousins. I was the foundation, the floor they stood on, the one expected to carry the weight quietly, indefinitely. And when I finally announced I was retiring, they all acted surprised. Like it had never crossed their minds that I might want something more than a life spent repairing other people's damage. That party, the one they hijacked, had been the first thing I ever planned for myself. The first time I dared to say, this is my moment. And they still took it. They took it because they didn't see me. Not really. They saw what I did, what I gave, what I covered, but not me. And I think, deep down, I had known it for years. I just hadn't admitted it until now. The clock ticked past 2. The house was quiet. The baby's nursery, still half finished, sat open down the hall, waiting. I stood, stretched my back, and walked to the table. I opened the folder again. I read every word twice. Then I started signing. The sun had barely crested over the rooftops when I placed the stack of papers on the kitchen table. The house was quiet, just the low hum of the fridge and the distant clatter of a garbage truck making its morning rounds. I didn't wait for coffee. I didn't sit down. 3 envelopes, sealed, labeled neatly in black pen. To Mom and Dad. To Trent. Notice to vacate, 30 days. I stood there for a while, just looking at them. They didn't shake. They didn't threaten. They just sat there, honest and official. Like everything I'd never had the courage to say was finally printed in Times New Roman and notarized. I heard the floorboards creak upstairs. Footsteps. A door creaked open. My mother's soft shuffle came first, slippers dragging along with like always. Then the sharp click of her nails against her phone screen as she scrolled. She walked into the kitchen, hair still pinned from sleep, and glanced at the table. She stopped. "What's this?" she asked. I didn't answer. I let her read. She picked up the top envelope like it might burn her fingers. Her lips moved silently as her eyes scanned the letter. It took maybe 10 seconds. Then her voice cracked like glass. "Aaron, what is this?" "They're eviction notices," I said plainly. "You all have 30 days to move out." The words didn't even feel real as they left my mouth. But they were. I had signed them. I had mailed copies to my lawyer. This wasn't a warning. It wasn't a bluff. It was done. My mother's face crumpled into disbelief. This has to be a mistake. "You're not serious." "I am," I said. She blinked, then looked down again at the paper as if it might suddenly rewrite itself. "I gave up everything for you boys," she said, voice trembling now. "I stayed home. I cooked. I made sure you were fed. I paid your mortgage," I replied. "I paid the taxes. I fixed the heat when it broke. I put Trent through 3 different certificate programs and 2 half-started businesses." "You gave up everything?" "I gave up decades." She opened her mouth, but before she could respond, Trent came bounding down the stairs. "What the hell's going on?" he asked, half-dressed in sweatpants and a smug tone like usual. I turned and held out the second envelope. He took it and ripped it open with one hand. It took him longer to read. I could see the confusion work its way across his face, a squint, then a furrowed brow, then a slow, dawning disbelief. "You're evicting us," he said, finally. "Yes," I said. He laughed. Actually laughed. "You're joking. This is a joke, right?" I said nothing. "You're kicking us out? Your own family?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm removing people who've lived here rent-free for years and treated me like a background character in my own life." "You're a bitter old man," he snapped. "You're jealous because I actually did something with my life." My mother gasped. "Trent, stop." "No," I said, raising a hand. "Let him talk. Let him call the guy who worked night shifts since he was 19 jealous. Let him insult the man who kept a roof over his head while he failed his way through a dozen careers. You can't do this." My father's voice boomed from the stairwell. I hadn't even noticed him come down. He grabbed the notice from Mom's hand, looked it over, then glared at me like I'd just torched the flag. "We're your parents," he said. "You are," I said. "But you stopped treating me like a son a long time ago." "You're making a mistake," he said, stepping closer. "This isn't how family solves things." "No," I replied. "This is how adults solve things when they've been taken advantage of for far too long." My mother's face was wet now. She collapsed into a kitchen chair, shaking her head. "When that baby comes, when you're holding your child, you're going to regret pushing us away." I walked over and picked up the last envelope, left untouched on the counter. The one labeled to Trent. I handed it to him again, steady this time. "This house isn't yours anymore," I said. "It never was." He ripped the letter in two and dropped the pieces on the floor. "You think you're strong now," he said. "Wait until you need help. See who shows up." I looked him straight in the eyes. "I've already seen who shows up. It's always me." Then I turned around, walked out the door, and left them all sitting in the kitchen, stunned, shouting, crying, surrounded by years of silence finally shattered. The messages started before breakfast. First a, "Hey, can we talk?" from my cousin Jenna. Then a voicemail from Aunt Claire telling me my mother hasn't stopped crying and that, whatever's going on, it's not worth tearing the family apart. By noon, I'd gotten texts from 5 different relatives, none of whom had spoken to me since at least last Thanksgiving, all expressing concern and hoping I would see reason. They didn't mention the eviction notices directly. They didn't have to. I could practically hear my mother's voice echoing through each of them, dripping with rehearsed heartbreak. "Aaron's just not himself lately. He's under stress. We're all so worried about him." Sure enough, by the end of the day, my phone buzzed with an email from a blocked address. The subject line read, Concerned about Aaron, mental health inquiry. The body of the email was short, but nasty. Not sure if this is relevant, but one of your consultants, Aaron R., may be experiencing a psychological episode. His behavior has been erratic, including sudden threats against family. Just thought someone should be aware. No name, no signature, but I knew where it came from. They weren't just trying to guilt me back into line. They were trying to ruin me. I forwarded the email to my lawyer with a short note. Anonymous defamation attempt, suspect family member. Please advise. Then I deleted it and didn't respond. Not to that, and not to the dozen more texts that came flooding in throughout the week. Lena saw the stress piling up in my shoulders, in the way I started double-checking locks at night, in the way I stared at my phone like it might explode. They don't get to come back just because they're loud, she said, rubbing the back of my neck one evening. They don't get to erase what they did. I nodded, but the weight didn't leave me. That Thursday, I found myself face-to-face with Trent in the hallway. He'd taken to lurking around, shirtless in gym shorts, as if flexing and sighing would change the outcome. That morning, he cornered me near the laundry room while Lena was out. You've made your point, he said, voice low. But if you keep this up, I could lose my job. You think Boston wants to deal with a guy evicted by his own brother? You should have considered that before hijacking my retirement party, I said. You turned it into a job fair. He stepped closer, tone sharpening. That was one night. That was every night, I snapped. Every dinner, every family event, every moment that should have been shared, you grabbed both ends and made it yours. You didn't just take the mic, you tore down the stage. He didn't say anything, just glared. Then he stormed off muttering something about spite. I thought maybe that would be the last of it for the day. But later, as I was cleaning out the coat closet, I turned around and found my mother standing behind me. Her voice was soft, calculated. When that baby gets here, she said, you're going to wish you had your family around. You don't know how hard it is. I didn't raise my voice. You're right, I said. I don't. But I do know how hard it is to be invisible in a room full of people who claim to love you. She blinked. Lena and I will be fine, I added. We'll raise this child without guilt, without silence, and without people who only show up to be served. She opened her mouth like she had something to say, but nothing came out. After a moment, she turned and walked away. The next morning, I woke up to another concerned message from an old family friend, someone I hadn't seen in years. Hey, just checking in. I heard from your mom. I know you're going through a lot. Let's get coffee soon. I didn't reply, because I wasn't going through a lot. I was getting out of it. Day 16. I was stirring sugar into a cup of decaf when the doorbell rang, not a knock, but the sharp, official ding-ding you recognize instantly. I already knew who it was before I opened the door. A sheriff's deputy stood there, expression neutral, holding a clipboard. Morning, he said. You Aaron Hargrove? Yes, sir. He handed me a sealed envelope. Just need your signature here. It's a legal notice of eviction proceedings. You've initiated action? I signed. My hand didn't even shake. After he left, I stood there for a minute, envelope in hand, the paper weight of it finally shifting the whole ordeal from emotional to legal. This wasn't about guilt or memory anymore. It was facts, deadlines, court dates. The noise started almost immediately. Trent exploded first. Literally. Not 20 minutes after the papers were served, he punched a hole through the wall in the upstairs hallway. I heard the thud from downstairs, followed by a yell that was half rage, half desperation. I didn't rush up to stop him. I didn't even flinch. I just walked over to the calendar, Lena, and I kept on the fridge and updated the event block for the coming Monday. Eviction hearing, 10 a.m., bring folder. I added a second note below it. Schedule painter for wall damage, upstairs hallway. By the time I sat back down at the table, Trent was in the kitchen pacing, huffing like a steam vent. You're really doing this? He barked. Like, actually taking this to court? I've already done it, I said. That was the deputy. You're all officially on the docket. You're out of your mind. No, I replied. I'm finally sane. He grabbed a glass from the sink and slammed it down. I have a job, Aaron. I'm leaving for Boston in a few weeks. I can't deal with this. Then don't, I said. You have 2 feet and a suitcase. Figure it out. He looked like he wanted to throw something. Instead, he stormed out the back door, shouting curses into the yard. Mom started in next, wailing like it was a funeral. She slumped onto the couch like she'd been shot in the chest. What do you want from us? She cried. We raised you. We loved you. No, I said from the hallway. You relied on me. You didn't love me. You used me. She started to sob louder. Dad said nothing at all, just stood with his arms folded like he was watching a bad rerun of a show he used to care about. Lena came home a little later and saw the deputy's card on the counter. Today, she asked softly. I nodded. It's real now. She hugged me from behind, her hands resting on my stomach, just over the curve where our baby was starting to grow. We spent the rest of the evening filling out preschool waitlist forms and scanning pediatrician reviews. We chose paint samples for the nursery. We made chicken soup from scratch. We laughed when the baby kicked, or maybe it was gas, but we decided to call it a kick anyway. Upstairs, Trent threw another tantrum. Doors slammed. Drawers banged shut. I didn't go up. I didn't knock. I was done knocking on doors that only opened when someone needed something. This time, I stayed in the light. By the final week of the 30-day notice, the house had gone strangely quiet. No more outbursts. No more sobbing fits in the living room. Just boxes, little piles of them, slowly multiplying near the front door like awkward guests waiting to be carried out. I came downstairs one morning and found a stack labeled TR books, duct-taped sloppily, leaning against the wall. Next to it, Mom, linens. The handwriting looked familiar, probably my mother's, sharp and rushed, like she was trying to make the whole thing go faster by scribbling her way through it. Trent avoided me entirely. If I walked into a room, he left it. If I stood near the fridge, he wasn't hungry. He made sure I heard his suitcase rolling over the floorboards when he came and went, like some defiant declaration of travel plans. He'd lost the job in Boston. I knew that much from the way he stopped talking about it. No more boasts. No more late-night phone calls on speakerphone so we'd accidentally overhear the recruiter praising his technical brain. Just silence. He tried to save face by bringing over a co-worker one afternoon, some girl with a lanyard and bleached hair who looked too young to legally drink. They stood in the kitchen, Trent loudly declaring that some people would rather see a child born into chaos than make room for family. It was performative, loud enough for me to hear in the hallway. I stepped into the doorway and looked at the girl. "How old are you?" I asked. She blinked. 20. You were drinking at the retirement party." She turned pale. What? I still have security footage from the venue." She looked at Trent. "You didn't tell me that," she hissed, grabbing her coat. "I'm not getting caught up in your family drama." She was gone before he could say another word. That night, I found Trent in the garage, staring at the dented side panel of Dad's old Taurus. He didn't speak. I didn't either. He packed the rest of his boxes the next morning. My father left first. No dramatic exit. No parting words. Just a glimpse of his back through the front window, walking stiffly toward the driveway with 2 old suitcases in hand. I didn't see where he went, and I didn't ask. My mother clung to the house like she thought her tears could glue her to the floor. On her last morning, she sat on the living room couch and sobbed into a tissue while staring at a framed photo of Trent as a toddler. It was like watching someone audition for a role they'd already lost. "I gave you everything," she whispered. "Everything." I didn't respond. I just handed her the last of her bags. Trent came down last, dragging his final suitcase behind him with one hand and tossing a blanket over his shoulder. At the door, he turned and looked at me. "You're a vindictive bastard," he said. I opened the door. He walked out. I closed it behind him, slowly, letting the latch click into place with a soft thunk. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't watch them drive off. Instead, I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stood in the center of the quiet house. For the first time in decades, it was mine. The silence settled over the house like a fresh coat of paint. Not the kind that chokes you with fumes, but the kind that softens a room, fills it with warmth. I hadn't realized how loud it had been, the guilt, the tension, the echo of doors slammed and voices raised. Now, every footstep felt different. Like the house was finally exhaling. It took me a full day just to clean everything. I scrubbed walls, vacuumed carpet lines into perfection, boxed up anything left behind. I found one of Trent's hoodies crumpled under the couch and tossed it into the donation pile without a second thought. Then I got to work. The nursery was half finished, a soft gray on one wall, untouched drywall on the others. I set up the crib that had been sitting in the garage unopened, folded onesies into drawers, unboxed a mobile shaped like little clouds and buses. Lena had found it online as a joke, but I loved it immediately. And above the crib, I taped up a tiny drawing I'd done years ago on my lunch break, a cartoon city bus with smiling passengers. Just pencil and ink on printer paper, the lines a little shaky. I'd almost thrown it out twice, but now it had a place. The light came in soft through the window, catching the white walls just right. Outside, the trees swayed gently, brushing the side of the house with lazy fingers. I stood in the doorway and just watched for a while. Didn't need to do anything. Just be. In the afternoons, I walked down to the Ridgewood Community Center, not for a party this time, but to meet with Mr. Longley about using one of the back rooms as a studio. We struck a deal. A few nights a week, I'd be there sketching or fixing old transit diagrams people brought in. I even started drawing again, real drawing, not just doodles on receipts or mechanical drafts. I hadn't drawn freely since I was a kid. Since the day my mother called it, just a hobby. But now, there was no one to roll their eyes. No one to tell me I was wasting time. Just me, a quiet room, and the scratch of pencil on paper. Lena noticed the difference. She'd find me humming while chopping vegetables, or running my fingers along the wood of the crib like it was art. She started leaving sticky notes around the house. "You did good. He's gonna love this place. I see you, Aaron." And I believed her. Because for once, I wasn't building a life around other people's needs. I was building it for us. For our son. For the peace I had thought would never arrive. One night, I made a cup of tea and sat in the recliner by the window. No TV. No phone. Just the quiet. I looked around at the freshly painted walls, the empty hallway, the drawings on the coffee table. And I realized what that feeling was. Safety. Not borrowed. Not bargained for. Not conditional. Real safety, built by my own hands. And I finally understood. This was the life I'd been making room for all along. For years past. Some mornings I still woke up expecting the chaos, the stomping upstairs, the passive-aggressive sighs at the breakfast table, the muffled arguments through closed doors. But instead, all I heard now was birds. Sometimes the dishwasher finishing its cycle. The soft sound of a crayon scribbling if my son was already up. His name's Henry. He's for now stubborn, curious, always asking questions that stop me in my tracks. Why do buses need mirrors if they already have windows? Can we go to the grocery store just to see the lobsters? He started kindergarten this fall. His backpack's bigger than he is, and every morning he insists on packing his own lunch. Turkey sandwich, apple slices, one of those juice boxes with a cartoon on it. And always, his favorite item, a little plastic lunchbox with a drawing of a wrench on the lid. He drew it himself. Said it reminded him of Daddy's tools. Said it made him feel safe. That got me in the chest more than I'd expected. I never wanted to be a legacy. I just wanted to be steady. Now I had a kid who thought tools meant comfort. That meant I'd done something right. The business I started, custom mechanical tools for classic cars, took off slowly but steadily. I kept it small on purpose. Just me and 2 apprentices. We work half days, Monday through Friday, and every third Saturday we volunteer with the high school's auto club. I keep weekends for Lena and Henry. That's non-negotiable. We go to farmers markets. I let Henry pick out misshapen vegetables. We build birdhouses we'll never finish. We bake cookies and somehow always run out of flour halfway through. We're happy. I haven't heard from my family in years. Not directly. I've caught little pieces, a cousin mentioning at a hardware store that Trent never took the job in Boston, that he bounced between gigs and ended up sleeping on someone's couch in Akron. Someone else said Mom and Dad tried living with Aunt Cheryl, but got kicked out after a month for boundary issues. Whatever that means. But I don't gloat. I don't celebrate their downfall. I just acknowledge it. Quietly. The same way I acknowledge the weather. Because those were their choices. Their actions. Their silence. Their manipulation. And I made mine. One night, Henry sat in my lap after dinner, tired but fighting sleep. "Are you my real dad?" he asked out of nowhere, head tucked into my chest. I smiled. "Of course I am, buddy." He nodded, satisfied, and closed his eyes. And in that moment, I realized something. Family isn't about obligation. It's not about who owes who or who gave what to whom. It's about respect. About showing up. About not letting love become currency. I'd spent most of my life building a house for people who didn't know how to live inside it. But now I was raising a son who would never have to wonder if he mattered in the rooms he stood in. That's what peace looks like. And I'd built it. With my own hands.